years ago on a cold February night. It was 3:30 in the morning, just days since we buried my baby boy Asher, and the phone rang. It was my mom. "Were you sleeping?" she asked. "How could you sleep at a time like this? How could you sleep when God would take that baby away from you? Why would a good God take that baby away?" she asked. I was speechless. My heart ached and I had been grieving, but honestly, my heart broke for my mom, who didn't have the hope that I had to cling to. And I knew I could give her platitudes: God is good all the time, Asher's in a better place, but frankly, none of those would actually answer the foundational question that she had: what really she wanted to know. The same thing most of us want to know when the pain and the suffering of death reaches in and steals the joy from our lives. Does God really care? In her worldview, it didn't look like he cared at all. So maybe death has come into your life, into your workplace, your family, and your home recently, and you're wondering, just what kind of a God are we dealing with here? Is he a benevolent God, or is he a malevolent God? If that's you, this message is for you today. Maybe it's for a friend, so listen well, because we have been silent about death long enough. We have let death distort our view of the nature of God. So I want to answer the question for you today, the one that I should have answered for my mom 14 years ago. As Christians, we should use daily conversations to provide understanding and to showcase the care of God in ways that dispel the fear of death, demystify the understanding of death, and crush the despair by offering hope. We do this by infusing our conversations with truth. See, our friends, they need to know that death is not natural. And until we discuss this topic of death openly, we lose opportunities to point a hurting and a fearful world to Christ. These conversations abound if we embrace them. So, first, to dispel the fear of death, we must uncover what is hidden or brushed aside, what is considered natural that isn't. Tim Keller is helpful in this as he reminds us that our age is so devoid of hope in the face of death that the topic has become unmentionable. We don't even like to look at it. We tuck it away behind closed doors in nursing homes and whisper its existence to our children. So, why does our 21st century culture hide death? Well, for starters, most of us are on a happiness quest. We're not on a truth quest. When my son Asher died, I had three older children and I welcomed them into the hospital room to hug their baby brother, to kiss him, to say goodbye. Many family and friends were upset. They would prefer that I told them, well, he was gone now, but he's like a flower blooming outside your window, or a star shining down from the nighttime sky. A happy story. Why would I let them see the inevitable fate of all mankind? Why not tell them a happy story? But it isn't a happy story. Our hearts tell us it is not a happy story, and Genesis 3 tells us it's not a happy story. But it does have a happy ending. The problem is that we've stopped the story midway, and we've forgotten to tell the rest of the story. Maybe it's because we don't really know it that well, but maybe it's because we've let our conversations about death be smashed by the fear of this topic. You see, 20th and 21st century man sees death as a natural end to a merely biological life, if he sees it as anything at all. And in our doubts and in our silence, we've imbibed this gospel of modernism. One of history's great mathematicians, Blaise Pascal, speaks to this as he mentions the diversion of the thought of death. He says, as men are not able to fight against death, misery, ignorance, they have taken it into their heads, in order to be happy, not to think of them at all. We must demystify this understanding of death. We are, in fact, enslaved by this misunderstanding of death, from Pascal to Gilgamesh to the current COVID death counts on the news. We're a society living in fear and in ignorance and in misunderstanding. We're taking Christ out of the equation. We're expecting death to still make sense. We're replacing him with power, with money, success, achievement. If we think we can live for these other things, then what is our gain? These things, they all leave us bankrupt. This lie, this is where death humiliates us. This is where death frightens us, and I'm not sure how that makes you feel, but it horrifies me because this is the anthem for many people that I love. These lies, they leave us in despair. We must crush this despair of death by offering hope. The truth is that death is the great leveler with whom we will all come face to face. These things don't matter, but what Jesus has done does matter. Our grief does matter. That grief, the end of the story, it points us to Jesus. God's care is evident in the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus. Does God really care? Yes. Christianity has the only reasonable explanation about death. It's the only one with true hope. Why wouldn't I share that with my children? Why aren't we sharing that with our family and friends, those that we love? We must remove these obstacles. In order to do that, we must talk about it. For me, to live is Christ, and to die is gain. God has worked everything from the beginning of time. Jesus willingly climbed on the cross, died, resurrected, has conquered death. What he has conquered, we fear. Why are we fearing it? If we're honest and if we're real, death has been that crackling sound of the AM radio, drowned out by the busy YouTube version of our 21st century lives. But we need to turn it up. We need to look at it. We need to face it. And we need to remember that Christ has conquered it. And that gain that Paul talks about, it is yours. When you realize that you don't have to defeat death for yourself, you're set free. You're set free to enjoy life, to have these conversations, to direct your life toward the glory of the one who's already conquered it for you. That is what I wish I would have said to my mom 14 years ago. That is the hope that we must share with an understanding of death in order to dispel the fear of death and in order to crush the despair of death by offering that hope. That is the hope that rests in the one true God, the creator and the sustainer of everyone and everything. And that, my friend, is something worth talking about.